Picture this. You're standing in line at customs after a family vacation. You've done this 100 times. Same passport, same smile, same routine. But this time, the officer pauses, looks at their screen, asks you to step aside. Ma'am, I see you haven't registered your dual citizenship status. Your heart drops. I didn't know I had to. The deadline was 6 months ago. This isn't a hypothetical nightmare. Starting February 2026, this could be your reality if you hold citizenship in more than one country and you miss what's coming. I'm going to be straight with you. What I'm about to share isn't clickbait and it's not fear-mongering. It's a genuine shift in how the US government tracks dual citizenship. And honestly, most people have no idea it's happening. No dramatic announcements, no breaking news alerts, just quiet policy changes that carry very real consequences. If you were born with 2 passports, became a US citizen but kept your original nationality, married someone from another country, or even have kids born abroad, the next few minutes could save you from complications you never saw coming. Let's talk about what's actually changing and what you need to do about it.
The era of silence is ending. Here's something most people don't realize. The US has always allowed dual citizenship. You can be American and Canadian, American and Mexican, American and practically anything else. The government never forced you to choose. But here's the catch that's changing everything. For decades, the system ran on an honor code. You could hold 2 passports, travel between countries, live your life, and unless you were applying for a security clearance or caught in an audit, nobody really asked about your other citizenship. It existed in this strange gray area, legal but largely invisible. February 2026 ends that invisibility. The government is launching a mandatory registration system for every U.S. citizen who holds citizenship elsewhere. And when I say mandatory, I mean there's a deadline, there are penalties, and this isn't something you can politely ignore and hope goes away.
What you actually have to do. Starting February 1st, 2026, you'll have exactly 6 months to register through a new Department of Homeland Security online portal. The deadline is August 1st, 2026. This applies to you if you're a dual citizen by birth, if you naturalized as American but kept your original citizenship, or if you gained another citizenship through marriage or ancestry, even if you've never used that passport. What they're asking for isn't simple checkbox stuff either. You'll need to provide which countries you're a citizen of, passport numbers, details about any government work you've done abroad, and whether you've served in a foreign military. Miss this deadline, you're looking at fines up to $5,000. But honestly, the money is the least of it. You could face problems renewing your passport, delays when you travel, complications sponsoring family members, and if you work in any government-adjacent role, this could genuinely impact your career.
Why this matters more than it sounds. I know what some of you are thinking. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm legal. Why should I care? Because this registry doesn't exist alone. It's designed to connect with other systems. Border control, tax enforcement, immigration services. They'll all be able to see whether you registered, and more importantly, whether what you told them matches your actual life. Did you list France as your other citizenship, but forgot to report that French bank account on your taxes? The IRS is about to have much better tools to notice that. Do you spend 6 months a year in your other country? Border officers will start asking why, especially if you're sponsoring a spouse or parent for a green card. Have kids born abroad who automatically got citizenship in that country? You're now responsible for registering their dual status too. This is where things get real for everyday people who've been following the old normal without realizing the rules just changed.
The tax reality nobody talks about.
Let's address the elephant in the room, taxes. U.S. citizens pay taxes on worldwide income, always have. That hasn't changed. What's changing is enforcement. If you're a dual citizen with a bank account, property, or investments in your other country, the government is getting much better at seeing those assets. Information sharing between countries is expanding dramatically. Here's what catches people. If you have foreign accounts totaling more than $10,000 at any point during the year, even for a day, you're supposed to file something called an F-bar. It's separate from your tax return, and the penalties for missing it are brutal. We're talking $10,000 per violation per year, and in bad cases, up to 50% of the account balance. The new Citizenship Registry will be cross-checked against these filings. If you register as a citizen of Mexico, but the IRS has no record of you reporting Mexican accounts, you've just painted a target on yourself. This isn't about catching criminals. It's about closing the gap between what people are supposed to report and what actually gets reported.
If you travel frequently, listen up. Starting this February, expect more questions at the airport.
If you're bouncing between the U.S. and your other country of citizenship, especially if you're spending significant time abroad, border officers are going to start asking about your life. Where do you actually live? Where do you work? What ties you to the United States? They're not trying to trap you. They're trying to assess whether you're genuinely living as an American or if you're mainly on paper. The best protection? Documentation. Keep records of your U.S. residence, employment, tax returns, anything that shows you're anchored here, not just visiting. And always enter and exit the United States on your U.S. passport, even if your other passport would make the line shorter.
What about your kids? If you have children born outside the United States to at least one U.S. citizen parent, they're often automatically dual citizens. Starting in 2026, when you apply for their U.S. passport or birth documentation, you'll have to disclose their other nationality. That information goes into the registry. You're responsible for keeping it updated. Why does this matter? Because 15 years from now, when your kid applies for a security clearance or a government job, there's going to be a record. Planning ahead now prevents surprises later. The military service question. This one's tricky and genuinely important. If you serve in a foreign military voluntarily, especially as an officer or in combat, it can be interpreted as intent to give up your U.S. citizenship. The laws around this have always existed, but starting in 2026, the government is watching more carefully. Some countries have mandatory military service. If you had no choice, that's generally understood. But if you volunteer, especially for a country that isn't a close U.S. ally, you could be creating serious problems for yourself. And here's the new part. You'll have to disclose prior foreign military service when you register. That information can affect security clearances, government employment, even immigration decisions later. If you're even considering military service abroad, talk to a lawyer first. This is not an area to wing it.
What if you want out? Some people, after hearing all this, decide dual citizenship isn't worth the hassle. That's a valid choice, but it's not one to make lightly. Renouncing U.S. citizenship is permanent and expensive. There's a significant fee. You have to appear in person at a U.S. embassy abroad, and there can be tax consequences, including an exit tax if your assets exceed certain thresholds. Starting in 2026, before you can renounce, you'll go through mandatory counseling to make sure you understand what you're giving up, because once it's done, there's almost no way back. Alternatively, some people choose to renounce their other citizenship instead. That process varies wildly by country. Some make it easy, others make it nearly impossible. The point is, don't make this decision in a panic. Dual citizenship offers real benefits: mobility, opportunity, family connections. For most people, complying with the new rules is far better than giving up that flexibility. What you need to do right now. Mark your calendar, August 1st, 2026. Start gathering your documents now. All passports, naturalization certificates, birth certificates for you and your kids. If you have foreign bank accounts or assets, review your tax situation. If you're not sure you've reported everything correctly, talk to a tax professional who specializes in international tax before the registry goes live. If you work in government, defense, or anything requiring security clearance, tell your security officer now. Proactive honesty protects your career. Surprises create problems. And most importantly, stay informed. Implementation details are still being finalized, and guidance will evolve.
The U.S. isn't banning dual citizenship. It's not trying to punish you for living a global life. What it's doing is bringing structure and visibility to something that's been operating in the shadows for too long. For people who comply, who register honestly and keep good records, this will mostly be a bureaucratic inconvenience. For people who ignore it or assume it doesn't apply to them, the consequences could be genuinely disruptive. You have time. You have options. What you don't have is the luxury of pretending this isn't happening. So take it seriously, but don't panic. Prepare instead of react. And if you found this helpful, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because the worst thing that can happen isn't the new rules themselves. It's being blindsided by them when it's too late to do anything about it. Stay informed, stay compliant, and most of all, stay one step ahead.